There's a 6-foot-wide stream in England that has killed every single person who has ever fallen into it. Not most people, every person. The water looks calm, barely knee-deep in places, and locals have watched it claim lives for centuries without being able to explain exactly how. That's just one of the places we're covering today, and honestly, it might not even be the most disturbing. Ilha da Queimada Grande sits 20 miles off the Brazilian coast, and the Brazilian Navy has made it illegal to go there. The island has between 2,000 and 4,000 golden lancehead pit vipers living on just 43 acres. That's roughly one snake for every 6 square yards. The golden lancehead exists nowhere else on Earth, and its venom is so potent it can kill a human in under an hour. The venom literally melts tissue. There are stories of fishermen who drifted too close and were found days later. The lighthouse that once operated on the island was automated in the 1920s after the lighthouse keeper and his entire family were killed when vipers entered their home through the windows. The Brazilian government now prohibits all visits except for occasional scientific expeditions with full medical support teams. Even researchers who've been granted access describe the experience as walking through a minefield where the mines actively hunt you. The Danakil Depression in Ethiopia sits more than 400 feet below sea level and regularly reaches temperatures of 130 degrees Fahrenheit. It's one of the lowest and hottest places on the planet. The ground is covered in sulfur fields that release toxic gases, and the area contains lakes of acid that can dissolve organic matter. The Dalol hydrothermal field produces bright yellow and orange landscapes that look like another planet, but the water there has a pH close to 0. That's more acidic than battery acid. The few people who live near the depression are salt miners who work in short shifts because longer exposure becomes lethal. There are no rescue services. If something goes wrong, you're on your own in an environment where the air itself can blister your lungs. Several scientific expeditions have been forced to turn back after equipment failures, and at least 2 researchers have died from heat exposure in recent decades. North Sentinel Island is less about environmental danger and more about the certainty of human violence. The Sentinelese people have lived in total isolation for an estimated 60,000 years, and they have made it clear they want no contact with the outside world. They respond to all visitors with immediate lethal force. In 2006, 2 fishermen who drifted too close were killed, and their bodies were never recovered. In 2018, an American missionary named John Allen Chow attempted to visit the island despite warnings and was killed within minutes of reaching the shore. The Indian government has declared the island and the waters around it off limits, and they do not attempt to recover bodies or prosecute the Sentinelese. It's one of the last places on Earth where stepping onto the beach is effectively a death sentence, and everyone involved, including the government, agrees that's how it should stay. Most people know Death Valley as hot and unforgiving, but there's a section in the park where something stranger happens. The racetrack playa is a dry lake bed where rocks, some weighing hundreds of pounds, move across the ground on their own and leave long trails behind them. For decades, no one could explain it. The phenomenon was finally captured on camera in 2014. It happens when the playa floods slightly and freezes overnight into thin sheets of ice. When the ice breaks up and gets pushed by wind, it shoves the rocks across the slick mud. The danger isn't the rocks. It's that the conditions required for this to happen, extreme temperature swings, freezing nights, and flash flooding, make the area a death trap. The playa is miles from the nearest road, there's no cell service, and if you're caught out there during a weather shift, exposure can kill you in hours. Rangers report finding abandoned vehicles every year. Oymyakon in Siberia is the coldest permanently inhabited place on Earth. The record low temperature recorded there was minus 96.2 degrees Fahrenheit. At that temperature, exposed skin freezes in minutes and fuel begins to gel. The ground is permafrost, so nothing can be buried, and the town has no indoor plumbing because pipes would freeze and shatter. About 500 people live there, and they've adapted. But outsiders who arrive unprepared don't last. There are documented cases of travelers whose vehicles broke down and who froze to death before help could arrive. Even breathing becomes dangerous because the moisture in your breath can freeze your lungs. The town exists because it sits along a historical trade route, but there's no reason anyone unfamiliar with extreme cold survival should ever go there. The Bolton Strid in Yorkshire, England, looks like a creek you could step over. It's narrow, sometimes just 6 feet across, and the water looks shallow and calm. But the Strid is actually the river wharf forced through a narrow gap. What looks like a shallow stream is actually a vertical channel 30 feet deep or more, with the entire force of the river concentrated into that tiny space. The current is so powerful that if you fall in, you're pulled under immediately and slammed into submerged rock formations and undercut ledges. The underwater topography is a maze of cavities and channels. No one who has fallen into the Strid has ever been pulled out alive. Bodies are often never recovered. It sits in a popular walking area, and there are no barriers because the danger isn't obvious until you're in the water. Local historians have tried to count the deaths, but records only go back so far. The real number is likely over 100. The planet has plenty of places that don't care whether you survive them. These 6 aren't haunted or cursed. They're just honest about what they are. If you found this one unsettling, drop a comment with the location you'd never visit no matter what. And if you want to see what happens when people ignore warnings like these, check out the next video on exploration disasters that were completely avoidable.